So good morning, everybody. I say good morning. I suppose it depends when you're listening to it, really, but it's morning time as Paul and I are sitting here. So welcome back to Because I Can podcast. We thought we'd mix things up a little bit. We kind of missed doing this, to be honest. And previously, we've talked about things like adventure and kind of skills from different areas, different arenas, and kind of how you pull that back. And maybe in some respects, it's been a little bit sort of retrospective. Whereas what Paul and I thought we would do this series is try and be more reactory. So whenever we see something that's kind of happening in the media, or maybe live events of which the world is pretty bonkers at the minute, we often talk about VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, and that is pretty much the world at the moment. So what we thought we would do was then maybe talk about tools and toolkits and some of the things we've perhaps talked about on webinars and seminars and stuff that we've done in the past, and how, in our view, how that applies to maybe dealing with situations that are going on now, using kind of current news topics to relate that. So we thought we'd see how we get on. Anyway, Paul, welcome back. It's quite fun to do this again.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be sitting down and having a podcast and a chat with you again. I think it's going to be interesting to discuss because, like we always say, it's good to learn from your mistakes, but it's even better to learn from someone else's mistakes. So perhaps we can use stuff that's out there, ideas, thoughts, stuff that's in the media, stuff that's obvious for us to talk about and compare, and everyone listening will obviously get what we're chatting about, and sort of see what tools, what tricks are being used out there, and then is there any way to relate them back to our day jobs, what we're doing today, and take the good stuff and then not take the bad stuff, really. So yeah, looking forward to it.
All like a free lesson. That's what we always
Exactly.
say. So I thought I'd kick it off. We were commentating whilst I think you were probably driving half around the country earlier in the week, and I was listening to an article on Radio 4. And again, we should make the point here, guys. What we're talking about really is kind of toolkits and observing behaviours and observing the reactions of those behaviours, rather than necessarily making any sort of political statements. And one of the things that was really, really interesting is that there's quite literally been a downturn in the economy, but nothing's actually happened yet. And in the past, we've quite sort of regularly talked about the importance of communications, what and how you communicate, and the effect that has on people, let alone a country. And we're kind of putting it out there a little bit that what's happened is that the current government has almost been too honest. They've sort of done the right thing, and this is not a political statement. And they've said that we've got a tough road ahead. But the facts and figures show us that there is actually a bit of a downturn in the economy, which is interesting because nothing's actually happened. They haven't actually released the budget yet. We haven't had the budget yet. So it's almost as though the communication has somehow directly affected the budget, even though we haven't actually sort of seen a change in the budget. What's that all about, Paul?
Yeah, well, again, just want to reiterate that absolutely we are just using people in the media to highlight what they're doing, the tools, the tricks, the communication styles. Absolutely not standing here saying that politically this is right, this is wrong. Please don't take any sort of either positive or negative thoughts in terms of Labour, Conservative, Lib Dem, etc. from this. This is purely using visual media, people we all know and can look at, to take those tips and tricks and relate those to what we can do in our business world. But again, we've discussed this a few times. What it looks like, they've come in and it's very easy to do that, almost like a plumber who comes around and looks, or an electrician who comes around to your house and goes, "Ooh, look at what cowboy did you have in before? God, look at this. This is going to cost you. Oh, it's an absolute disaster. The last chap you had in here was absolutely rubbish." And I can understand why that message of the last bunch were absolutely terrible, because it gives you a bit of breathing room and it gives you a bit of space to say that, oh, we've got to make some tough decisions. It's not our fault. We're being forced into it. But imagine if that's you in business. Imagine, and I bet you everybody listening to us has had a leader, a boss, a team manager, someone come in and apologize for the decisions they're about to say. Apologize to the room for what they're about to say. I'm really sorry. I don't want to do this, but my hire is telling me. I'm really sorry. It's not my fault. It's the last lot. It's that lot. It's that lot behind. It's that lot in their ivory towers. And basically, what that does is it sucks the morale out of everybody in the room. Walking in and saying and apologizing before you've even started speaking means that everyone is like, oh God, this is going to be awful, isn't it? And so you've got no one getting behind you, no one thinking this is going to be great, no morale, no inspiration, no motivation, all the stuff that you talk about, Tim, about trying to, motivate the room and get people to buy into the plan. It's not going to happen because you've started off on that back foot and said,
Yeah, I
I'm
think
really sorry
I
about
think
that.
mistakenly people try and build rapport, don't they? And they've probably misidentified rapport, and they're almost sort of thinking, oh well, everybody thinks the last lot were terrible, so if I kind of tell the last lot were terrible, we'll all kind of be friends. And actually, my experience, and I know your experience as well, is that when people are under pressure, real pressure, what they actually need is reassurance and direction. So actually, we've kind of done that, right? And I would suggest, like, if you looked at the election and again, kind of parties out of it, the people have voted literally and kind of said, let's have a change. So arguably, the bit about what's happened in the past has been done. So actually, now we're now moving into the element of whatever's happened has happened. What we now need is reassurance and direction. So actually, you now need a leader, not a manager, I guess, in our
Mhm.
kind of parlance, and a leader to say, "I've got this, and this is what this is what's happening." But for me, and ironically, because last night I was at an air cadets unit, and we were talking about climbing mountains, but we were talking about the in order too. We sometimes talk about when we climb Everest, understanding the why, kind of why am I going up to come down, to go up to come down, etc. I don't know what you think, but for me, that's the bit that's missing at the moment. Brutally honest, which is to be commended, really.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it's the why that's missing, or the answer that's missing.
Yeah, you can't just come in and tell everyone that it's a disaster and then stop there. You can't walk in and go, "Oh my God, it's an absolute mess," and leave it, because what fills that gap? Rumor, worry, anxiety. You get into that spiral and spin of getting nervous. Well, does that mean that my job's at risk? Does that mean that I'm not going to be able to afford to do X, Y, Z? You stop people planning for the future because now they are absolutely focused on worrying and getting upset, and almost never is the reality as bad as what then comes into your head. So we are creating worry, anxiety, fear in the group of people that you're leading, but in this case, the country, and unexpected outcomes happen, as you said at the beginning, Tim. We're affecting the financial performance of the country based on rumor, innuendo, worry, that sort of stuff, rather than having any sort of facts. Because again, we haven't got to the budget. We've just heard the bad stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about fear, don't we? Standing for false expectation appearing real, false expectation appearing real. Fear. It's the coulda, woulda, shoulda. It's the catastrophic thinking that pervades into a business or into an organisation when there's kind of, I don't mean a lack of leadership. I mean a lack of direction. So when people are kind of, why have I got to do this? Okay, this is going to be hard for a minute in order that we can achieve that. And without that, we've got to enable resilience in other people. My sort of banging the drum a bit, recently is, resilience has become a little bit of a kind of almost like a selfish topic. Yeah. Am I resilient? What about me? What can I have? What can I do? Whereas actually, if we can enable resilience in other people, as a team, we grow much faster. And I guess our communication, more to the point, as a leader, needs to reflect that. We need to communicate to an outcome. So rather than, and I know we work with a lot of professional services people. Obviously, you work with the veterinary industry, and we always kind of say that the greatest strength, often, of professional people is that they have a logical brain and they follow the steps from one to seven or A to B or whatever you want to do. And often the greatest weakness of professional people is that they have a logical brain and they follow the steps from A to B and one to three. Uh, and therefore, without that kind of the outcome, without thinking about what happens next and why this happens next, we sort of lose ourselves down this sort of catastrophic thinking spiral.
Yeah. So what can we do? If you come in, you've got a bad message, you've got bad news, you've got to explain to your team that difficult decisions need to be made, which is, I think, what the government and Rachel Reeves has done. I think she's very clearly set out that it is difficult. Perhaps allocating a bit of blame to the last set of cowboys that came round the house and did the wiring or fixed the
I've got a
plumbing.
split image of Rishi Sunak as a plumber now. I can't get
Yeah,
out of
perhaps. But now what? You've explained the problem, but then she's stopped. And so if we are, let's pull it back to perhaps people's day jobs. We are now communicating a difficult message to the team. We need to make some hard choices. We need to do something. But now Rachel stopped. What would you suggest that someone in that situation do? What do we do next? How do we not just go, it's really difficult, see you next week?
I think what you have to do for me is you want the whole team focused on the outcome. So you want everybody. There's nothing wrong with a good ideas club, but you want the whole team focused on the outcome and what they can do and what we have got. And we always joke, don't we, when we do team building exercises, inevitably, two or three people dive in and pick up all the kit that they don't need. Somebody else has got the plan without any form of discussion with anybody else. Somebody else inevitably has the answers to the plan, but completely gets ignored. And the reason is that people are pulling in all kind of random different directions all over the place. And it's that almost that, well, I guess what you said in military, right? The unifying purpose. It's that kind of, what is it we're trying to achieve? And then get everybody working towards that. And there was, again, probably showing my age now, but I had the radio on again this morning, and on Radio 4, they were talking about the NHS, and they were essentially saying that the NHS has taken such a sort of proverbial kicking over the last few years that they're starting to believe it. And it's almost as though when you've got a whole load of people going, this is broken and that's broken, and this is no good and that's no good, and then we're surprised when morale is low. It sounds a bit like my school reports, to be completely honest with you, but there we are. Whereas actually what we need to do is, what can we do? What have we got? What does that outcome look like? And for me, translate that outcome to your team. So it's all very well talking about bigger picture stuff. If you've got highly motivated, highly educated people that buy into the big picture, but actually for ordinary people, the big picture might just be you can afford to go to the pub on a Friday, but you're not be able to do that for 5 months. It's got to be translated back again. And I think the same is true in a business scenario. It's okay, we've got to change. We've got to do something. I mean, our business is flexing at the moment, definitely. What have we got? What can we do? What tools are available to us? And I think when we're under pressure, maybe the fight or flight mechanism's triggering a bit of anxiety, we have a tendency to go, well, this won't work and that won't work. We haven't got this and we can't do that. Then we perhaps blame the last guy as well. Rishi Sunak, the plumber. Sorry, Rishi Sunak, if you listen to this. We sort of blame the last guy, but all of that is very negative, and all of that's pulling us backwards. Just at the one moment when actually we need to be kind of trying to fight forwards towards a solution.
So I suppose the tool, and both of us have spent some time in the British military. The tool, I suppose, that we're going to sort of talk about that we could use is the in order to, the why. To steal Simon Sinek's golden why. If you tell people it's going to be tough, it's difficult, whatever it is that you want people to do, but then add an in order to, or explain why you're doing it, you're bringing people with you. You're getting people to get involved, and you're asking people to be part of the solution rather than just telling them what's going to happen. And as we all know, change is scary. No one likes change unless you're involved in doing the change. And then it can be quite exciting and quite interesting and quite involved. If it's done to you, it's horrible. If you're involved in the process and have some sort of skin in the game and ability to change it, it's a lot easier to deal with it mentally, to work through. So how do we do that? How would Rachel Reeves help this out? How do we, in a business sense, get across that in order to that why, rather than just telling people it's going to be tough? There we are.
I think for me, what you've just got to do is you've got to sort of paint a picture of the end game and try and paint a picture of where it is we're trying to get to, and also make people understand why that's important to me personally. I think we forget that. I think I always sort of say to people, there is no such thing as a motivated team, right? You can have a team of motivated people. And what I mean by that is we're all motivated slightly differently, right? And that's okay. That's a good thing. So I think what you've got to do is, this is why we're doing something. This is part of the solution. This is This is your part in that solution. But also, and I guess it must be super difficult if you're the chancellor because you've got to try and do that for the country. But somehow you've got to make that relevant to the individual people so that they understand why I'm doing this. The best example is, it sounds ridiculous, right? But it's the couch to 5K, isn't it? It's the, okay, it's going to take you 3 months, but you've said you wanted to be able to run 5 kilometres, and in 3 months' time you'll be able to run 5 kilometres. I've never actually done it, but however long it takes, you'll be able to run 5 kilometres. And it's going to be a bit sore at first, and then you're going to back off and you're going to walk a bit, and then you're going to run a bit, and you're going to stretch it, and part of the program. So then when you go out and you think, well, this is a bit sore, why am I walking now? You remember, oh no, this is part of this plan that's going to get me to the 5K, because that's what I sort of wanted to do. So you've got to translate that. And I think, building on what you were saying a minute ago as well, I think it actually empowers people. The clever thing about the In Order To, obviously, back again, sort of good old fashioned Sandhurst days, was it allows people to think, because you tell people, this is what we're actually trying to achieve. Here's an idea of how we get from here to there. But if we achieve the outcome, I don't mind if you go left and right a bit, provided we get to the outcome. So you're kind of allowing people to be a part of their own solution, maybe.
I like that. Imagine couch to fitness. No end game.
That's where I am at the minute.
Couch to fitness. You'd be like, well, when does it stop? What's my goal? Where am I going to? That would be very depressing. Just, the doctor telling you to get fit. Well, great. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, really helpful,
how do I do that? But at least with the couch to 5K, you've got an outcome, you've got something to go for. If you don't hit it today, it doesn't matter so much. You can, flex up and down and do a little bit. Great. No, I think that's exactly right.
And I think my parting shot would be very much about, just think about the outcome of what you communicate. And I think sometimes we communicate almost too precisely, and by that what I mean is we check the grammar and the spelling, and does it flow right, and we kind of look at it almost as a sort of factual thing. And back to our professional services people, we tend to sort of follow the chronological order. Whereas my crazy mind, I tend to go, what outcome do I need? What reaction do I need in the people? And I start there. I need the people to understand it's going to get better, or whatever it might be. And I start there and then build the communication backwards. Because, my sort of hypothesis when we started today was that it's actually the communication that's affecting the government at the moment. Sorry, the economy at the moment. It's the communication that's affecting potentially the NHS at the moment, almost as much as the reality of doing it. And it's certainly affecting the ability to fix it. So we just need to think really carefully about reassurance and direction, how and what we communicate. And I think for me, what do I want the people to do at the end of this communication? And therefore, does my communication achieve that? Or am I just kind of putting out some sort of factually correct, chronologically ordered message that, whilst is accurate, maybe doesn't have the impact that we need from a leadership perspective?
So perhaps in conclusion, starting off with, yes, it's bad. It's quite difficult. We're going to have to make some difficult decisions, but the future is looking really rosy. We're going to get growth, and then a bit of reassurance. Don't worry, I've got this. I'm on this.
Yeah, I think potentially, Paul, even start with a reassurance. First. I quite often joke with people. I say to you, if I walked into your organisation, any organisation, right, and I stood up front and I went as the CEO, or whatever, and I said, right, so the markets have changed. The previous lot haven't left this in a very good state. We've got to have to do something different. We're going to need to totally change the way we do our business. So we're going to look at all of that. What are you now instantly thinking? You're thinking,
worried about your job.
Yeah, I'm going to lose my job, redundancies, right? So actually, anything I say from now on in, all you're thinking is, when was the last time I wrote my CV? what does my LinkedIn profile look like? Etc. If we started with, right, guys, no one's losing their job today. We're hanging on to the team, but we're going to have to change the way we do business. Obviously, I'm oversimplifying it. But in my view now, the whole company's taken a big sigh of relief. We've dealt with the elephant in the room. We've given the reassurance and direction. And now people, in my view, are much more up for the kind of, okay, I better be a part of the solution then, because the next time we have this conversation, maybe it's not so positive.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. We've been talking for just about 30 minutes. I didn't quite time it. So with my current pace, that's about 5K. If you happen to have your earpods in whilst you're listening to us, so what we'll try and do is we'll get them shorter, and then that way, probably I don't know, by Christmas, maybe doing a sort of 25-minute 5K.
5K.
See where we get to it.
Awesome.
Thanks very much, guys. We'll listen to you on the next one. Bye.
Thanks, guys.